What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome to my channel. An absolute crazy, amazing week one is in the books. Lots of close games, lots of really exciting games, down to the wire finishes, and even some crazy finishes there as well. Had a crazy finish in that App State, North Carolina game. Of course, Florida State LSU on Sunday was absolutely insane. This was a really exciting week of college football, and if the rest of the season is going to be like that, sign me up. This is going to be a very, very fun season. I'm here giving you guys my week 2 top 25 after all the chaos that we saw open in week 1. Lots of shuffling from my latest poll, which I actually uploaded back before week 0. My poll did not change from week 0 to week 1. That's why there was no week 1 video. But the preseason poll was my week 1 poll. Now, I'm going to share with you guys my week 2 poll. Lots of shuffling, watching moving around. Couple new faces into the fray as well. But before we get into that, I appreciate you guys clicking on this video. If you end up liking what you see, I post videos during the season as well. And I upload every single day there's a college football game on my community tab. So you want to be sure to stick around for that. And if you guys would like to, please help support my channel. You can do that by liking, commenting, subscribing, ringing the bell, sharing my videos. Really, anything you do to interact with the channel, even viewing this video, does help show support, and I appreciate anything that you guys may do out there. Let's dive into the top 25. As usual, got a list of some honorable mentions, some teams that I did consider putting into this week's top 25, but ultimately just failed and missed the cut. A couple of the teams here you will see are some repeats from last week. But there are a couple teams that dropped out of my poll, and I have to mention that. That's Wake Forest and Cincinnati. Wake Forest did not lose. I just felt like there were teams that jumped ahead of Wake Forest, and thus Wake Forest fell out of the poll. And then Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a team that I feel like is still going to be really good this year. I think they showed that in the Arkansas game, a grinded out type game. They held in there until the very end. Cincinnati's going to be a good team this year, but again, and if this was the top 26, Cincinnati would probably be that 26th best team. Wake Forest would be number 27. Also, I apologize if my green screen gets all weird like it is now. It should reset itself at some point. I don't know when. But anyway, Cincinnati, I think it's going to be a good team. They were in a grinded out affair, and they came up just short. Couple other group of 5 teams. Fresno State won their opening matchup, and UTSA in one of the more thrilling matchups of week 1 in that game against Houston. They came up just short in triple overtime. That's going to be a really good team this year as well. They got a couple more interesting non-conference games with Army. And Texas, another team you see here at the honorable mention list, and they have a big one this week when they play host to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Lots of teams out of the Big Ten in here. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue. Again, as that Big Ten West still remains wide open. Yeah, Purdue has already lost the game in conference play, but any 3 of those teams, you can make cases for why they could go win the Big Ten West. And in fact, those probably are the 3 frontrunners after the performance that Iowa put up against South Dakota State last week. Mississippi State is a team in here from the SEC. You could throw South Carolina on here as well. Those are 2 teams that I feel like are going to be, could be top 25 teams at some point this season, and maybe top 25 teams once it's all said and done. And then a couple teams out of the ACC, and that's Florida State and North Carolina. North Carolina, I want to see more from that defense. That offense is rolling. The defense has got a lot of work to do before I can put them in the top 25. And Florida State is just rolling. A huge win, a crazy win over LSU on Sunday, and that rushing attack is finally starting to get going. Jordan Travis is playing really well. That's going to be a scary Florida State team in ACC play. There are some more honorable mentions you could have thrown up here, but these were the teams that I considered throwing in the poll that ultimately came up just short. So who did make my poll? You probably have a good idea of it now, but as usual, let's count up. 25 to number 1, starting with number 25, which is the Oregon Ducks. Now, there just are not enough words to describe how bad Georgia got beat on Saturday. Literally not enough words to describe how bad Georgia lost that game to the defending national champs, the Georgia Bulldogs. And Georgia may have looked like the best team in the nation. You'll find out what I think later in this video. But Oregon just got stomped, hammered. I mean, again, not enough words to describe how bad Georgia got beat, and nothing went right for that team. Obviously, a lot to fix. Obviously, a lot to improve on from that game as they dropped 11 spots from my last poll. But Oregon, I still feel like is going to be a solid team this year. A team that can compete in the Pac-12, can compete for a conference title. That it may not have seemed like it, but on Saturday. But I just feel like Georgia is that good of a football team to embarrass a team in Oregon like that. Oregon barely stays into the top 25 fray. Couple teams in the SEC, Ole Miss and Tennessee. Ole Miss drops 2 spots while Tennessee rises a spot. Ole Miss, not as dominant as I thought they were going to be against Troy. Only scoring 28 points. Weren't as good offensively, but again, it's week 1. That offense is going to find its groove, and that offense is going to get going with Jackson Dart starting at quarterback. I thought Zach Evans looked really good for Ole Miss there as well. The wide receiver weapons, again, could use some work, but again, it's only week 1. You're going to see a lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2. And then Tennessee just stomped Ball State. I mean, ran all over them. That Josh Heupel offense was clicking on all cylinders. Tennessee deserves to be a top 25 team, and I have them at number 23. Penn State is in the poll here at number 22. I really like the performance that Penn State, especially Sean Clifford, down the stretch put together for this Penn State team. Yeah, he was a little hobbled in that game, but especially in that final drive, you're not going to see a better drive in football than that. I mean, Sean Clifford was spectacular that final drive, the game-winning drive against the Purdue Boilermakers in the blackout. A tough environment to walk away with a win, and Penn State got it done. They play Auburn here in a couple of weeks in Jordan-Hare. That's going to be a big kind of prove-it game for Penn State moving forward here, but they do enter my top 25 poll. I like what Penn State has. They still don't have a 100-yard rusher. That's going to change with guys like Lee and Singleton in that backfield. Kentucky's at number 21, and they have a huge matchup coming up this week, but the previous week, they kind of struggled with Miami of Ohio, especially throughout the first, I'll say 20 to 25 minutes. Eventually, Kentucky was able to pull away, I think, winning the game by 24. But still, I would like to see improvement from Kentucky. Again, only week 1, I know, but they dropped 3 spots in my poll from last week. Still a good football team. Still a football team that can challenge some of the better teams in the SEC, I feel. But there is some work to be done. Of course, Chris Rodriguez is suspended, so they are without that star back. Who knows when he is coming back? But again, Kentucky's got a huge game against Florida coming up this week in the Swamp. And that's going to be a huge game for Kentucky and for Florida, who you may see on this list a little later. You guys will find out here in a little bit. Let's move into the top 20. And here we have a couple group of 5 independent teams. BYU I have here at number 20. Not that BYU was not impressive. So, I mean, BYU does drop a spot. Not that they weren't impressive against South Florida. They were by far the better team in that game, and they blew the brakes off of the Bulls, and BYU looked really, really good. It's just Houston, I thought, looked really good in that game against UTSA. Now, so did UTSA. That's why they were in the honorable mention list. But BYU, Houston, I swapped their places from where I had them last time. If you want to leave Houston at 20, put BYU at 19. I'm not going to argue with you. These are 2 really good football teams. 2 teams that, if they have some good seasons, I could see making runs at getting into a New Year's 6 game. I think these 2 teams are that good. Houston may be the best team in the group of 5, and as of right now, they're the highest ranked group of 5 team. So they're the team that I think is most poised to come out of the group of 5 and get into a New Year's 6 bowl game. BYU, maybe they can make a run. They got a huge game this week coming up with Baylor. So that is going to be a very interesting game there as well. That game in Provo late at night. It's going to be a fun game to watch. So keep your eye out on that one. BYU's got a big game, but both these 2 teams, I just have swapping places from my last week's poll. Pittsburgh pulled out a grinding win against West Virginia in the backyard brawl. Now, it wasn't pretty. Keaton Slovis definitely sat in the pocket for a lot longer than I think Pitt fans would have liked to see, and the receivers struggled with some drop balls. Now, Pitt was able to pull out that grinded out win. A late pick 6 kind of sealed the deal, or the game-winning pick 6, I should say, with a defensive stop late that kind of sealed the deal. I thought Pitt played well. Yes, improvements to be made, but as is week 1, I'll probably say that a lot more during this video. But Pitt, I thought, had a really good game. And Keaton Slovis, besides sitting in the pocket for too long, made some pretty good throws. So I think if Keaton Slovis can get the ball out of his hands quicker, it's going to benefit this Pitt team a lot more. But Pitt, jumps 3 spots after that win against what I think is going to be a good West Virginia team. After watching that game, I thought JT Daniels played well. They also struggled with drops, but Pitt deserves a lot of credit for that win. They move up 3 spots here to number 18. Oklahoma State and Michigan State do not move from last week's poll. Now, that's a tribute to some other teams jumping them. And maybe, again, Michigan State, that secondary still struggled. And also, it has been coming out that Michigan State is going to be without some of their better defensive players, especially one in the secondary whose name is escaping my head right now, but is one of their better secondary members. I think he's out indefinitely, and they have another guy that's going to be out for the entire year on that defensive side. That'll come in my news video update report. I'll get names out there. They're just escaping my mind right now. But Michigan State still able to walk away comfortably with a win against Western Michigan, but especially in that first half, they struggled against Western Michigan. So Michigan State, especially defensively, has got some things to figure out. I thought offensively they looked great. I thought Peyton Thorne looked good. The duo of Berger and Brassard looked really good for this Michigan State attack. Yeah, still some defensive issues to figure out, and now you're going to have to do it without 2 of your better players, but that's still a good Michigan State team that's going to provide a challenge to some of these higher-up teams in the Big Ten like Ohio State and Michigan. Oklahoma State is here at 16. They almost let the game slip away from them against Central Michigan, but fortunately, Oklahoma State was able to hold off and get the comfortable, I believe, 12, 14-point win, somewhere along those lines. I'm pretty sure it was a 12-point win, but Oklahoma State's offense looks a lot more dynamic than I think a lot of people gave them credit for this postseason. Now, late, the defense kind of collapsed and backed off, but Oklahoma State had that game in wraps from pretty much the halfway through the third quarter on. That game was over. That game was done. Central Michigan was able to come back a little bit, but I mean, wow, a lot of credit to that Oklahoma State offense. They looked dynamic and they looked awesome in that game. And Spencer Sanders definitely has elevated his level of play, and that's going to only bode well for this Oklahoma State team. Moving in now to the top 15, where we have another newcomer at number 15, and that is the Florida Gators. What a performance against Utah. A lot of people felt like, including myself, that this Florida team may struggle to win some games this year. But Billy Napier and this Florida team, especially Anthony Richardson, oh my goodness, what a game Anthony Richardson had against Utah. That fake spin move, pump fake throw. I mean, that was one of the plays of the week. But Florida is going to be a good team this year. Now, they have a big prove-it game with Kentucky coming up. And if they can win that game, Florida football is going to be a lot better off this year than a lot of people thought that Florida was going to be this year. That sentence was phrased weird. Let me rephrase it. If Florida can win that game against Kentucky this upcoming week, Florida football is going to be a lot better than people thought they were coming into this season. They went toe-to-toe with Utah, matched them stride for stride, and again, Billy Napier's goal was to out-Utah. Now, I don't think they quite out-Utah, but they were pretty dang close. They were pretty physical, pretty level match with this Utah team. A late interception in the end zone sealed the win. Florida looks really, really good. Now, a lot of people might be drinking the Florida Kool-Aid a little too much. I myself may end up falling victim to this as well. But again, a huge prove-it game with Kentucky. If they can win that one, good things are going to come Billy Napier's way, and good things are going to come to Florida fans, and good things are going to come to Billy Napier if they can win that Kentucky game. USC falls a spot here to 14. Now, not that they didn't play well. I thought they looked great. But again, they played Rice, a game that they expected to win. Caleb Williams looked good. Those new wide receivers looked good. And Jordan Addison, a lot of other transfers coming in for that team. Travis Dye even looked good at the running back position. The defense looked fine. USC is gonna be really good this year. Now they have a kind of prove-it game in and of themselves on the road against Stanford, who they absolutely got destroyed by last year. Now, new coaching staff, new quarterback, pretty much knew everything for this USC team. So we'll see how that game goes. But man, did USC look good in game one. And they only fall a spot to 14 because Arkansas rose from 15 to 13. The more and more I look at this Arkansas team, the more and more I like them. And now the more and more I'm starting to like them after seeing them play what was a physical, grinded-out type game against Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's going to be a really good team this year. I've already said that in this video, but so is Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be a phenomenal team this year. They may be able to push some teams like Alabama to the limit if they play like they did in this game. Now, things can improve, yes, and I still think KJ Jefferson can play better. He played really well in the game against Cincinnati, and I still think he has some level of improvement to go. That's how high of a ceiling I think KJ Jefferson has. I think he can play really well. He's got a lot of weapons at the wide receiver position. The running backs were running really well for this Arkansas team. The defense was physical when it needed to be. Yeah, it let up a couple plays it probably shouldn't have, but all in all, Arkansas got the 7-point win, improves to 1-0 on, or gets to 1-0 on the season, and this is going to be a scary Razorbacks team. I'd be afraid if I saw them on your favorite team's schedule, because Arkansas, yeah, going to be good this year. NC State falls 4 spots to 12. Now, I'll admit, I was probably a little too high on this NC State team. That game against East Carolina, they got really lucky as the East Carolina kicker just couldn't put the PAT home and couldn't put what would have been the game-winning field goal home either. Whew. NC State, you escaped with that one. Now, no doubt in my mind, this is still going to be a good football team this year. The only difference is the offense has some things to improve on, yes, but I mean, this defense, oh my goodness. NC State's defense, yes, they only won the game by 1. East Carolina, I feel like, is going to be a really good team this year, though, and I mean, that NC State defense, flat out, was probably one of the better defenses I watched in week 1 this week in week 1. In fact, they may have been the best defense I watched or that paid really close attention to because, wow, they played really well. And the offense did just enough to be able to come out with this win. Now, the offense, I think, is going to get better, and Devin Leary and company have some steps to take. But NC State, yeah, they dropped 4 spots because other teams, I thought, rose ahead of them. And I'll admit, I was probably a little too high on NC State before the season started. But who knows? NC State absolutely could jump back up into that top 10 frame. They are that talented of a team. And coming up here, they got some pretty interesting games coming up on the schedule. And NC State's got to be prepared. So watch out for the Wolfpack. They're going to be dangerous. Things to improve on, though, from that game against East Carolina. Miami stomped Bethune-Cookman as expected. They hung 70 on them. Miami's going to be a really good team this year. I think that performance showed it. They don't move. Pretty self-forward, explanatory there. Miami looked good, played good, came out with the win, did what they had to do. Mario Cristobal and company, that's a dangerous team in Miami, Florida. Moving now into the top 10, where I have Utah. Yes, in my mind, Utah is still a top 10 team. Now, I'm going to defend this claim because I know there are people out there that are going to say, well, Florida beat Utah, therefore Florida should be ranked higher than Utah should be. That's just how it should work. I think people need to realize that's not how it works. I think Florida needs to have a prove-it game. Again, Florida has a prove-it game with the game against Kentucky. Utah, they probably won't have a prove-it game until USC. Now, Utah, I still think is a really good team, and that Florida game was just the case of I think Florida was underestimated coming into this year, and I think that was all in all a case of just 2 very evenly matched teams. I absolutely still see Utah as a top 10 team in my mind. I still see this team as the Pac-12 favorites. I thought Cam Rising played really well. I thought Tavion Thomas played well. Wide receiver group, yeah, could use some work. That tight end room looked good. The defense was physical when it needed to be. It was actually physical all night long. It's just Florida's offense was able to get going against this Utah team too. And Utah had its chances to win the game. Again, they were right there at the end of the game. It's just Florida's defense made a nice read, intercepted the ball. Maybe a pass that Cam Rising would love to have back. In fact, I know it's a pass that Cam Rising would have loved to have back. And I think people are questioning whether or not this Utah team can still reach the college football playoff. There's no doubt in my mind that if Utah wins out and is looking impressive throughout the rest of the year, this Utah team is going to have a good shot to get into the college football playoff. Make no mistake about that. Utah falls 6 spots, yes, because of the loss, but that's a very talented Florida team on the other side, and this is a really talented team here with Utah. Texas A&M rises a spot to number 1 because Utah falls. Now, I was not really impressed with Texas A&M in that game. Yeah, they scored 31, and yeah, they shut out Sam Houston, who's one of the better teams in the FCS, in fact, winning the FCS championship in the COVID year. But I was not impressed with this Texas A&M offense at all. I thought the offense could have played a lot better in that game. And early, A&M was struggling with this Sam Houston team, only pulling away kind of early in the second half. And Haynes King, he was tabbed as the starter, but he's got some work to do. Devon Achane, I thought, looked pretty solid. But, I mean, and actually, Anaya Smith playing in that game there as well, which I thought was a little surprising considering the off-the-field circumstances that he had. But Texas A&M, I think is still going to prove to be a good team this year, but I mean, especially offensively, there's some things that they got to get figured out in that team if they want to continue to be a top 10 team. Now, I'm going to keep them a top 10 team for now, but they got a game in a couple weeks here with Miami that for both teams is going to be a big-time game to showcase what those teams can do. A&M does rise a spot, though, to number 9. Number 8 is Oklahoma. Now, I was really impressed with this Oklahoma team. In fact, so impressed that I had them rising 4 spots in this poll. Now, they beat UTEP. In a couple weeks, they have to go on the road to play a struggling team in Nebraska, but that's still going to be a tough environment for Oklahoma to go play in. They got Kent State this week, I do believe, before that game in Lincoln against Nebraska. And then, of course, before they go into Big 12 play. I was impressed with Oklahoma. I thought Dylan Gabriel looked good. The defense was looking good at times. UTEP was able to get off some plays against them, but I expect improvement in week 2 on both sides of the ball. And Oklahoma, in my mind, is a top 10 team as of this moment. This is the one I'm probably going to have to defend the most. Notre Dame rises 2 spots in my poll after that loss to Ohio State. They go from 9 to 7. Now, I know what you guys are already typing in the comment section. How can you have Notre Dame rising when they lost a game? First of all, they lost a game to a top team in America and a team that may very well go on to win the national title this year. And if you would have told me that Notre Dame would have held possibly the best offense in the nation to only 21 points, I would have told you you were crazy. And yet, look what they did. Notre Dame came out and played really well defensively. They played exceptionally well. Along with NC State, Notre Dame, this was one of the best defenses that I watched this past week. And again, Ohio State was without Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming. But even then, Ohio State may still, without those 2 guys, have one of the best offenses in the nation. And Notre Dame held them to under 400 yards, 395 to be exact, and 21 points. And Notre Dame, the offense will come, right? Tyler Buchner didn't look quite comfortable, but he's a young guy, and he has good weapons around him. He has good weapons in the backfield, and that Ohio State defense played, I think, a lot better than people think as well. So Notre Dame, the offense will come, and the defense is there. This is a good Notre Dame team. There is no doubt in my mind that this is a top 10 team, and this is one of those cases that even though you lose the game, you prove a lot of people wrong, and you still rise in my poll. Notre Dame, even though they lost that game, I think looked really impressive against what then was the number 2 team in the nation in Ohio State. In fact, as of this moment, still is. Again, I have not seen the AP poll yet as of recording this video. It may be out by the time this video goes live, though. But Notre Dame, I feel really good about this team, and I think Marcus Freeman has a lot of good things going with Notre Dame here. They are number 7. Baylor is here at number 6. I still like Baylor. They beat Albany. They did what they had to do, hung 69 on them. Nice. Baylor, again, has a big matchup. They have to go on the road in Provo and play a really good BYU team. So all eyes should be on that game. You got to stay up late to watch that one. That'll be a game in my preview prediction video. But Baylor rises a spot here to number 6, as I still really like what the Baylor Bears have on this roster. And again, if they can pull off that win against BYU, you may see Baylor in my top 5 next week. But for now, they're just missing out on the top 5 at number 6. Moving in now to the top 5. You guys know who the top 5 teams are by now. But in case you don't, let me tell you. Clemson I have here at number 5. Now, Clemson, I know what people are going to say about this offense. It still looked shaky. DJ is not as good as he was in 2020. Put in Cade Klubnik. Now, what I will say is when Cade Klubnik came in for that one drive, he looked really good. And the Clemson offense flowed through him, and they went down and scored on that drive. DJ and this offense struggled to get rolling in the first half, and Georgia Tech was able to keep it close. But Clemson found their offensive rhythm late and were able to pull away from the Yellow Jackets. This defense was as advertised. The special teams played really well. They blocked 2 punts in this game against Georgia Tech. I thought Clemson played well. The offensive improvement, I think, is going to come next week. Right? I think we're going to see some steps in the right direction. And DJ, I thought, has already looked better than he did past season. And again, there were some wide receiver drops in this game as well. So Clemson's got some things to work on. But all in all, I think as of right now, this is a top 5 team. Obviously, I have them in my top 5, but the top 4 in my mind are really obvious. I have Michigan here at number 4. They thumped Colorado State. They did everything they had to do. And we got to see Cade McNamara start. And we got to see a little bit of J.J. McCarthy in there as well. Now, we'll see J.J. McCarthy starting this next game running with the ones against Hawaii. So we'll see what Michigan is able to do there. Again, we'll see in week 3, then when they play UConn, which quarterback ends up getting that starting job. And I might be switching those games around, but I'm pretty sure they end up playing Hawaii this week. So Michigan looks really good, and they look like a top 4 team in my mind. But there's no denying who the top 3 teams in the nation are. And honestly, at this point, with the way that these teams played last week, put them in any order you want. Put them in any order you want. Before the season starts, it was Alabama, Ohio State 1, 2, and then Georgia as that clear number 3. Now, you see I have Georgia all the way at number 1. I mean, wow. That offense is something else. And that defense is still really good too. Georgia in week 1 may have just proven that they are the most balanced team in America. Alabama went and beat Utah State by 55, and they even shut them out. Will Anderson looked good. Bryce Young looked good. He threw 5 touchdowns, and I don't even think he had 200 yards. That's how good Bryce Young was in that game. Now, both those teams there in the SEC, and then, of course, Ohio State at 3, winning a top 5 game against Notre Dame, and a team that I have in my top 10, a team that I have at number 7 right now. Yet, Ohio State drops 2 spots. They were my number 1 team. Now they're number 3. Look, you guys know how much I like my Buckeyes, but Georgia to me is that clear number 1 team. The way that they just were able to come in and demolish the Oregon Ducks was the most impressive performance that I saw this week. No doubt in my mind that Georgia is that number 1 team. They're here at number 1. Bama is here at number 2. Bama, I think, is a really good team. They showed me a lot there, but Bama is almost tied with Ohio State for number 2 in my mind, because Ohio State played really well. And I know the criticism that Ohio State is taking already is that offense is not as good as last year. Well, Jackson Smith and Jigba got hurt. Julian Fleming, who was Ryan Day's player of the spring, were not available for most of the game, as Jackson Smith got rolled up on and he was out for most of the game. This Ohio State defense has taken massive steps forward. Massive steps forward. They looked really good, held Notre Dame to 72 yards and no points in the second half, something that would have just been insane if Ohio State defense last year were able to do it. Jim Knowles has done a great job with this defensive system, and the offense will come. C.J. Stroud struggled to form chemistry with some of these young wide receivers and some of the more inexperienced wide receivers that had to kind of be thrown in there because of Jackson and Julian's injuries. And yet, CJ still made some of the best throws of the week, fitting it into those tight windows, making throws outside the numbers in tight coverage. That's just what CJ Stroud does. He did not have a bad game by any means. Yeah, there are a couple throws he would have had to like back, but it's week 1, guys. The offense is going to come for this Ohio State team. The thing that you got to take away is they beat the number 5 team in the country by 11 points, and that defense looked outstanding. And they were finally able to get into the gap, something that Ohio State just couldn't do last year. But honestly, put the top 3 in any order you want. They're definitely the top 3 teams in America, almost separating themselves in a league of their own. And those 3 teams very well are going to make the college football playoff and are going to be very scary to play this upcoming season. But that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think about my top 25. Hey, even leave your top 25 down in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Do anything you can to help support the channel. It does mean a lot to me. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.